Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 10 of True Lies. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I should have figured, I kind of figured that's where the Emilio and Valentina storyline would turn out the way it did, especially with the way they set it up at the beginning, where it is a thing that Harry and Helen don't have any friends they can kind of be completely honest with. Yes, she has her yoga friends, he has his bowling friends, but they don't have any couple friends that they can, do the spy thing with. I mean, I guess it's like Gib and Eva, but it's like it's a dating couple versus a married couple, which that whole thing could turn into a whole complicated thing. It's I guess the closest you could have was Luther and Maria, but even if they were dating, it'd still be just a dating situation. So, there's no other fellow couple spies thing. And, it's the one couple they hang out is super dull. I even love their, later on there's a conversation about should we really be spying on people to try and pretend to be their friends? And then, you have Harry be like, yeah, do you remember those the parents from, I think it was Dana's soccer team or something like that. If we had done some investigating and find out that they were running a Ponzi scheme a pyramid scheme before we ended up inviting them over for game night or something like that. It's that would have been that intel ahead of time would have been nice to come in handy. But essentially this revolves around a general in Cuba. I think he's kind of been an ousted general, but whatever the case may be, he has access to some missiles, and he plans on firing them on Miami and going to start basically a new Cold War. And basically it's up to our crew to stop them. And it involves Harry and Helen getting close to this couple who, I forgot what their fake position was, but it's right, if you can convince them, because the U.S. having secretly putting agents in Cuba trying to go after this general wouldn't be copacetic. It'd be pretty, for one, hard to get to him because of his security, plus American soldiers. That turned into a whole international incident in itself. So the point was to befriend this couple and convince them to end up killing this guy themselves. And it's right, we're going to have to pretend to get close to this couple. But going through their stuff, Helen really liked the wife, Valentina. Hope it is the right right person. I think that's her name. Also, side note, wasn't that, I'm blanking on her character's name, but wasn't she in, oh God, there was a short-lived show on Fox called Deputy with Stephen Dorff. Was it Deputy? I don't remember the show's name now. I want to say that might have been it. Wasn't that the actress who played his wife? I could be mistaken. I don't know if that's the same actress. I think it is, but I could. It's been a while, and I could be completely wrong. Either way, Helen really likes her. It's oh my gosh, she reads this book. She reads this book too. It's so good. Oh my gosh, she has such a nice choice in fashion, and that's what Helen was oh yeah, we could talk about spy stuff, and we could also talk about clothes, and you and this person. No, we could talk about clothes, and we could talk about guns and this and that. And she's also saying Harry. I keep saying Harry and the husband could hit it off, which they ultimately ended up doing. But it's and I love that when this foursome, which is wrong word to use, but we'll get to that in a second, met and hung out. They really had it off, and you can see Maria and Luther being whoa, even Gib being okay, you didn't even have to pretend, they're literally enjoying it, living it up. Their parents too, with the exact same dynamic of kids that are teenagers 2 years apart or something like that. So they're really bonding. And what I thought was really surprising is when they're oh, we have a proposition for you or something like that. And immediately Maria went to where my brain went. I'm are they swingers? I was no, they're going to seem like swingers, but it's actually, I thought it was going to be something very blasé that they were going to ask you, but it was going to seem uber suspicious because of the whole implication that it might be a swinger situation, which I even love Luther being wait, if they are swingers, and that means Helen and Harry would have to go through it for the mission, would we have to listen because it's part of the mission? And Gib's almost shut up, don't even go there. But it turns out, no, they were actually going to ask Helen and Harry. I don't know why I keep saying Henry. Harry and Helen to bump off the general. And it's like, whoa, we were going to ask you to do it. Now you're asking us to do it. And in the moment, Gib is like, he noticed something suspicious. And it was like some, there was some like another signal that like kind of signal interference. Like I was like, oh, they are in fact spies, because that's what solidified it for me when Gibbs was like, he's picking up something else. I was like, that okay, they're definitely, they got to be spies then. So, and in that moment they both tussled with the generals. He had sent his men to come after them, because it turns out their right hand person ended up selling them out Floor, which, as they describe it later on, she's basically the Gib of their team. So their team is only a 4-person operation rather than the 5-person operation Omega's out, Harry and Helen's team are. So, which we'll get to that in a second, but I love the whole thing of like, right, are you really, did you really like that book or whatever? It's like, oh, like, trying to trust each other of like, well, you're not who we thought you were. Well, you're not who we thought you were. So it turns out you're spies and we're spies. So interesting turn of events. But now it's a situation of, well, sadly, Gib, Luther, Maria, as well as their right-hand person, Raul, got captured. Which I figured something had to be up about that dude. The dude starting all that crap with Luther. I thought he might have been a bad guy. I thought he worked for the general, and that was going to be an issue if things popped off between him and the guy. But I didn't think Raul. It wasn't until he got arrested I was like, he's with Emilio and Valentina. I was like, okay. I should just call them the Perez's, because I legitimately am blanking on whether or not the wife's name is actually Valentina, because I feel like such a dick if her name is not Valentina. I'm like, man, I got it super wrong. I'm terrible with names sometimes. Like, I will glop onto a name and be like, that's not... as you can see, I keep calling Harry Henry for whatever reason. Either way, so the team got caught. Gib is kind of getting tortured. Well, they're kind of beating the crap out of him to get him to get the rest of his team to bring the Perez's to them. We have... Luther and Raul already had their beef because of the whole, like, fighting over the table situation. Maria's got to be the mediator between the two of them, going back and forth about, like, oh, you communist, you. It's like, oh, you stupid American, you. And Maria, I love that he's like, oh, like, how can you be beside this American pig? You should be fighting for your own country. But for Maria, it's like, first and foremost, I'm not Cuban. I'm Colombian and American, and if you're calling him a pig, I'm a pig too. And I love Luther being like, oh, that's sweet. And Maria's like, shut up, Luther. And Raul's like, yeah, shut up, Luther. Luther's like, you shut up. I love that whole dynamic. I also love that she got them shutting up because she whipped them both with her hair. It's like, we got to work together, get the hairpin. And it's like, okay, Luther was trying to cut the rope, but it's like, ow, you cut me on purpose. I know you did. And when Luther initially got it, he's like, oh, did you really have to spit on it so much? And you can see Raul laughing because it's like, yeah, he meant to do that. So I don't know. They're back and forth. You know what I also like? It wasn't until near the end of the episode I was like, no, it was at the very, very end when they succeeded. We'll get to everything later in a second, but when they succeeded, I was like, wait, why aren't we dealing with that Floor situation? Isn't she still out there? I had completely forgotten the fact that I was like, oh, right. Like, she got taken out by Maria. Maria, like, bashed her and broke the chair over her and knocking her out when she came running into the room to try and kill them. I had completely forgotten about that for a second. I was like, oh yeah, because I was like, isn't she still out there and an issue or whatever? But really quickly on that team, I do like the whole, like, having to work together thing of, like, passing the gun back and forth. Luther takes out his side, Raul takes out his, and then Maria takes out the last guy. It's like, yeah, they actually make a pretty good team when they're not constantly, like, jumping down each other's throat and shitting on each other. It's so interesting, the parallels where the Perez's and Helen and Harry got along pretty well. Like, yeah, it was a little, we don't trust each other, but it's like they hit it off, then kind of didn't trust each other, especially because they hit it off so well. But now it's a thing of like, right, Harry and Emilio went to get some guns, whereas the wives had to stay behind. Because it's like do you actually have children and everything? It's like, yeah, we actually do. Because they ended up, like, we don't know if we can 100% trust each other. And it's like, well, we don't. But if we don't trust each other, not only the people on our teams, but also a lot of people in Miami are going to die. Like, that's a lot of lives are on the line here. So, and I love, for one, the advice Helen ended up giving Dana this episode ended up coming full circle, because like Dana was like, oh, I'm embarrassed, you know, the teenage thing of like, oh, I'm afraid of putting myself out here, getting on these like water skiing or whatever, because she was like, I don't want to do it in front of everyone and end up getting embarrassed and it end up online or whatever. So she was afraid to ask for help, and it came full circle where Helen had to ask Miss Perez, I have to do that, for like, you know, for help with the whole gun situation, which even she was like, yeah, it doesn't get any easier having to shoot somebody, but it's just like, you got to focus on what you're, like, you know, you got to have to focus on what you're doing it for and what you're fighting for. So, but Emilio and Harry ended up getting the guns, and it's like, oh yeah, like, and once again, it's like, they were just so, like, it just, they meshed together so well. So they set up their plan, and guns were, bullets were flying, when it came time to take down the general, because trying to draw him into I guess, because I was about to say, like, Harry and, had to, like, you know, turn around, pretend like he didn't have any guns, and then, like, Helen lift up her dress. I was like, hey yo, like, I don't know why, like, it's, I mean, she's wearing underwear. It's not like, there's plenty of, like, primetime television, like, networks that you can see someone's underwear, but I don't know why. I was almost like, oh, it felt, like, so risque for TV, for like, ABC or whatever, but I was like, I don't know why I felt like that. And I even love the Joan be like, okay, you can stop. Because I think even he was shocked that Helen's almost like I guess, I don't know if he really meant for her to, like, you know, display, like, you didn't have to kind of do the full 360, but I guess, like, the guns were hidden behind the Perez's backs, because in that moment they duck down, the guns come out blasting, and Helen and Miss Perez end up, you know, she ends up kind of pushing Helen, saying like, right, don't think, just pull the trigger, because she still couldn't do it. Because I was about to say, I was like, has she not actually pulled the trigger in the past? I guess not. Maybe she's done some covering fire situation, but not purposely ever shot at anyone. Because I think she said, like, in training and stuff, she's fired a gun, but it's never been in a life or death situation. So she, you know, but of course, because they brought it up at the beginning of the episode, you know, it was going to come back full circle in some regards. But Helen came through in the end when it came down to taking down the general, because Harry was in a position where he would have to shoot Gibbs, because Gibbs is like, nah, like, a lot of people are going to get hurt. He's already got the missile lined up and everything. You need to shoot me if it means stopping him. And even Emilio was like, if you can't take the shot, my friend, I sadly will have to. There's just too many lives on the line. And luckily, Harry didn't have to make that decision because Helen showed up. And it's like, you know, Gibby, like, you should have taken a shot, but I also appreciate you not taking the shot. So the whole team, you know, Luther and Raul have their farewells, and just Maria being like, why don't you guys just get a room? And it's like, yeah, it's like, I'll see you later, like, you American pig or whatever. And he's like, you little Cuban bastard or something like that. It's like, yeah, once again, it's just the juxtaposition of, like, they have a almost frenemy situation going on, whereas the couples actually legitimately like each other. It's like, oh, you should defect to Cuba. It's like, oh, you should defect to America. And it's like, oh, I guess it's the last time we'll get to see each other. You hope that maybe in the future they meet. And it's like, but at the very least, Harry and Helen walked away thinking, right, if we can make it work with enemy, like, spies or whatever, then, like, yeah, we can make it work with any, like, one else. All we have to do is try and put forth the effort. It's not going to be as exciting, you know, but, you know, at least Harry won't be tempted to punch someone in the throat like he was with Doug. He's like, oh, Doug he seems so punchable. Can I punch Doug? You know what would be really nice? Punching Doug. And Helen had to be like, no. He's like, no, not even a little. She's like, no, honey. So I also thought that tag at the end was, like, really cute too. And it's a situation of, well, I forgot what the context of it was, and it's like, oh, we could do a swinging situation. She's like, you'd have to kind of, what was it? She's like, you're gonna have to get me drunk before we had that conversation or whatever. He's like, oh, it's almost like, oh, don't tip me with a good time. And it's like, oh, let's bring out the rum or whatever. I'm messing up the exact thing, but I thought it was kind of a cute moment they had it in. I also like that, you know, it turns out Dana was able to do the thing. She did ask for help, and it worked out. I guess she didn't give her mom, like, because I guess she didn't tell, either her brother completely ignored it because he just didn't want to, or maybe, I'm curious, did Dana actually tell her brother to put on sunscreen like her mom told her to? I mean, she did hang up on her mom, and Helen's just like, again, like she does it all the time. Like anytime I say something she doesn't like, she immediately just starts hanging up. I think it's more so towards the whole, I love you, and me and your dad love you. I think it's that type of stuff that she's just like, I don't want to hear. But, yeah, I'm so curious. It's like, well, I was about to say, to be fair, it's like back to back, because I was just thinking about the whole spy couple thing. It's like, well, they met an ex-spy couple, but they weren't a couple. They were in a relationship, but they hate each other, and they broke up and hadn't seen each other in 15 years, but then they got caught back up in their twisted, weird love-hate relationship that they had. They're out there, but they're not, you're probably unlikely. I mean, you might run into them at some point in the future, but they're out there, and, what was it, Sharon and Arnie? So I didn't even think about that. It's like, all right, that is where last episode was. Like, you had another spy couple, once again, ex-spy couple, and I don't know. Hopefully everything's working out between them and wherever they've decided to disappear to. Either way, I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.